folks, today we got these folks. They're up on stage. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about hot takes in 2026. Give it up for Mark, Kelly, and Graeme. All right. Here's what I want to do. I want to start with some intros. Mark, you're right next to me, so maybe go first. Introduce yourself.
Cool. Thank you. I'm Mark Dain. I'm the CRO at Fueled. We run the largest energy equipment marketplace globally. So we built it, and we're based here in Calgary, but we're in about 25 countries. Think of it as Etsy or Facebook, but you're buying a power plant or you're buying a tank. You can even take a look, like hopefully during the after party, people make some purchases. Maybe Valentine's Day is coming up, so that could be an option. But everything from pumps to gas plants, anything complex in the energy value chain, we touch. A couple interesting things about us. We are employee-owned and we are self-funded, which is interesting. It's great because we're in control of our own destiny. The ironic counter is you actually get very little coverage in the Canadian press if you're self-funded because you're just steadily building a business, and that's boring. So we can kind of talk about that later today. And then I think the other thing that I wanted to flag for everyone is we are hiring and customers of ours are hiring. So happy to talk to people after the event.
Mark's a super boring guy. Don't ever hang out with him. My name's Graeme. I'm an investor here in town. I invest in AI infrastructure, both through venture capital and directly in the infrastructure itself. I don't have nearly any as interesting a story as this guy about, being the biggest or most interesting of something in the world. I think the coolest thing about what we do is that we were one of the first players in the world to start forming capital in the space. We were probably the first structured capital in the space in the world, and we're based out of here in San Francisco. We've seen a lot as a result of that, and so hope we can bring a great perspective tonight.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly. I'm really just here to create some balance with the three white dudes on stage, which I've spent a good chunk of my current tech doing, actually. I'm also the CEO of Headversity, which is a local mental health tech company. So we help companies and their workforces to become more resilient, drive psych safety, those types of things. And we're working on something really cool currently where we're trying to lead the way in creating a medically safe AI therapy tool that's always on to help you when you need it. So happy to be here. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, this is great. Give it up one more time. This is a really exciting panel. I think why I thought this was a really cool panel is I've had some friends who have worked with Kelly and said that she was the smartest person that they've ever worked with, and she recently decided to move back. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. Recently decided to move back to Calgary to join Headversity amongst other choices, and LinkedIn shut down for the day. Everyone sort of blew up. I also think that Graeme is one of five maybe VCs in Canada, building something really truly unique and with an incredible perspective, and also has really hot takes on LinkedIn as well. So we had to get him.
Very annoying. That's my
yeah, very annoying. And then Mark, an incredible LinkedIn user as well, but also a great friend and an incredibly smart guy. So I figured this would be a great panel to pull together to talk about what's going to happen in 2026. How I wanted to frame this, we wanted to talk about the future of work, then some general takes on tech across the globe, and then sort of boil it down to Canada and Alberta takes as well. So that's kind of how I'm going to frame it. But I might want to start with the question of the AI bubble. Are we in a bubble? Are we in a bubble or no bubble?
I'll go.
Yeah, go.
Give me where's my response? Right there. No bubble.
We'd also be in the no bubble camp. We use it fundamentally as a business. It's exceptional. If you aren't scared about AI in terms of like how your competitors use it or how it could replace you. Just try to carve out a day, 2 days. And it's crazy because you can literally ask it, how would you replace me? And it'll like walk through because it's so good. And it can even talk to you if you don't like typing. It is truly exceptional. And we see it. I'd say one thing that we see, because we're a bit further up the demand curve on this, is we do see the incredible power demand across our platform because we service kind of oil and gas, mining, power. And that power demand is very real. People do not commit to order books without being able to understand the ROI behind them. And it's kind of neat because in bubbles, typically you don't have the largest companies in the world being the ones that are ultimately backstopping the orders with their dollars. And this time you do. You have Microsoft, Meta. These are the names that are saying, okay, I will ultimately be the end user that will pay for that. And I think that's one, super exciting. But then two, it's something that Alberta can uniquely benefit from. Because we do have energy, we've got resources, both people and natural. And I think it's kind of a good opportunity. And like a lot of the people here have been spending time trying to make that happen, which is great.
So I'll build on that. If you look at past automation revolutions in history, one of the best ones to look at is the agricultural revolution. Our ability to bring industrial machinery to agriculture drop the household expenditure on food from being around 40% of the budget about 120 years ago to being around 8% of the household budget today. And that deflation came from 10 to 100x productivity for each agricultural worker as a result of tractors, as a result of combines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we're going to see now is that same increase in productivity as a result of these new systems that we're seeing that can deliver intelligence at low costs. What that's going to do is it's going to push the workforce away from where the current bottleneck is, which is intelligence, outwards. So 120 years ago, there was no such thing as a Michelin-starred restaurant. The food you can buy today, just as a regular consumer, is of a much higher quality than, the richest people in the world could get 200 years ago. You're going to see the same thing with intelligence products. It's going to diffuse out, and you'll see the workforce move to build value at those new locations.
But there was also no Michelin 120 years ago, was there? Like, there were no tires for cars.
Fuck, good point. He got me. He got me, folks. Fuck.
Okay. Guys, you want to weigh in on this hot topic?
I mean, some things might be overinflated. We might be building too many data centers, things like that. I don't know, but I don't think it's a bubble that's going to burst. I think it's here to stay. And I mean, look no further than, the stock prices of publicly traded SaaS companies that are all down 40% over the last year. That's the impact of AI. And I think there's a lot of exciting things that are going to come from this. And I think we're going to be able to build great businesses actually way more efficiently and with less capital than ever before. So I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah. Maybe sticking with you, Kelly, I'm curious how you see AI playing a role in Headversity now in terms of how are you approaching middle management, but also curious on the junior side. Like, do you see a shift in junior hiring, entry-level folks? Are you seeing that sort of decline?
I mean, we're a 45-person company, so it's hard to say that there are trends across any level. But I would say that, coming in new, we're definitely looking at all parts of the business and how we would do things if we just started AI first, in the first place. And so, you can do things now like, hire a go-to-market engineer who can do the same demand gen that used to take a team of 10 BDRs. And you can just take examples like that and go across the whole business and ask, like, how many lines of code does a human still need to write versus an AI agent, and a human's maybe checking it or helping drive, some of the logic. So I think it's hard to say, is it going to eliminate junior roles? I mean, it's going to eliminate roles that are just sort of task-based where speed matters more than like value or judgment. But also young people are probably better positioned to be AI experts that, like, I use it, but I'm too old to be good at it. And so companies are going to need to hire a lot of people with that AI expertise. And I think that's actually a real opportunity for young people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious. I got another question for you, Mark. unless you want to jump in. My question for you, Mark, is you got young kids. What skills would you be imparting on them, or would you like them to learn? Like, what do you think will be relevant when they turn 18 and enter the labor force, or maybe they enter the labor force at 12 now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do like to make sure my 5-year-old and 2-year-old are working. I would say kind of it goes to both questions, but I agree fully that you want to avoid task-based jobs. You do not want your job to be the task you do. I think that's always been true in careers because people will take those jobs and they'll do the same job for 40 years. I think just a lot of time we did not spend proactively thinking about that as, okay, that's a task-based job and I should try not to be just the task I do at work. Like it should be about the value I add with that data or that function. And then I think middle management is very much at risk. There are a lot of jobs where people just take info from a large part of the organization and then translate that info upwards. A lot of strong execs are now self-serving that entirely to themselves. So they've got their AI agent. They ask it, hey, how's that part of the org? It's pulling in a bunch of different data sets. They do not need someone to present to them every Tuesday on how that's going. So I think both those things, every night at bedtime, I tell my kids to avoid that. I think the other thing that, like, from a functional standpoint, that I really believe now is it's a very positive era for people that want to be generalists, which was not true, especially in technology, was not true like 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think if you have a broad set of interests, there's finally an opportunity in like pursuing those pretty actively, because now you have all the tools at your disposal. So if you have a broad set of interests, it will allow you to deploy those better. And so I think that kind of like age of the generalist is something that I'm very excited about with AI. Because I've probably, even for myself, I've probably been more excited about a variety of ideas throughout my career. And so personally, the ability to action them and test them very quickly with limited like resources strain is something that I'm personally super excited for.
Yeah. Graeme, do you think this shifts sort of how we are approaching in-office versus remote cultures? There's a big shift post-pandemic to remote. We've seen that move away a little bit. Are we going to keep that trend going?
So one of the terms that I've heard recently, we go to Y Combinator demo day every quarter, myself and my partner, Dain. Oh, there he is. He's taking pictures of me. Beautiful, Dain. Thank you. You're beautiful. We go to demo day every quarter now. There's, hundreds of funds. They say there's there's more than $1 trillion of dry powder in the room, and it's all competing over these startups, and they're all launched by people who are like 17 years old, and they're like, hi, my name's so-and-so. I just dropped out of Stanford to build this company. Wearing flip-flops. They raise, $10 million that day at a $50 million valuation. When you go there, the thing that I've been the most struck by is how they talk about bullshit laptop jobs and how AI is the end of the bullshit laptop job. And it's a phrase that you hear all over the place. If you can do it remotely today, you have to question the value that you're adding versus something else that can compete with you remotely. That's where you're going to see definitely a polarization around, call it like in-office versus remote culture. I don't think you're going to see the death of remote roles. I think that's very overstated. But I think what you will see is that there's going to increasingly be competition on qualitative factors for if you're going to be remote, what justifies it beyond the thing that you used to do well that now, you don't represent anymore.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Kelly, to continue on that thought, I'm curious if you have, and this is totally out of the blue and I didn't prep you for this question at all, but do you have a sense of like what will be the archetype of a human worker? Like what makes us good in 10 years? Is it the ability to communicate with one another or the ability to like be creative around project management?
Well, thanks for the softball to forecast 10 years out. I guess part of me says it's not going to be any different than what I think it is today. Okay. I think if people ask me what's the one thing I should focus on, Kelly, to be successful, I would say focus on your people skills. And I think I'd probably say that 10 years from now. Yeah. I think AI, tech, whatever it's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to change how we work. But like at the end of the day, it's great people that build great companies. And AI, it can take away a lot of things. It can take away middle management roles, whatever, but it can't like build a great culture that people want to be a part of. It can't like inspire people around a mission and doing something that matters. And I think if you get the people part right in your business, like pretty much everything else tends to fall into place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, Graeme, I got a question for you. Now shifting more into the general takes. What's up? Other than AI, what's super exciting coming up in 2026 that we can kind of anticipate?
You know, something I've even been talking with people here tonight about, I think there's a lot of interest in is robotics. I think that 2026, one of the big themes of the year is going to be the robot. One of the predictions we heard last fall at an event we put on was that there's going to be a robot Olympics in 2026. So you can imagine that in the olden days, the Olympics was a proxy for some type of warfighting capability. Oh, look at how far that guy could throw a, discus. Wow, a javelin. Oh, he can jump so high. What you're going to see is that a nation's warfighting capability is proxied in robots as well. And so there's a call for the Robot Olympics as like an international test of who can field a robotic army the most effectively. So robots.
Wow. Okay, that's a great take. That's an awesome take. Kelly, what about how is company building shifting going into 2026 in terms of like if you were to advise on like raising capital versus like bootstrapping early stage, or like how do you go? How do you build a company today, 2026, differently?
Honestly, I think it's situation dependent. I think a lot more companies today, I think with the help of AI, you can probably get to profitability and cash flow positive much quicker because you don't need to be as human intensive. So that's a big element. Does that mean that every company should be bootstrapped and not raise money? It depends, because sometimes it's just speed and you need to go seize the market opportunity and get first mover and all of that. And you might need the expertise or the network that a VC or a PE, can bring to bear. And so I think it's completely situation dependent in what you're trying to do. But I do see, I think, now that cash is cool again, I come from finance, so cash was always cool. And there was a period I was like, at Benevity, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like our investors just burning 20 million a year isn't enough. Like go burn 25. And I was just, my head was exploding. And now that that's not the case, I think, the need for capital is going to become less, but I don't think that means that nobody does a raise.
Yeah. Okay. And you now are building in the AI and health tech space. Are you excited about that space and what's going to happen in 2026?
I mean, I think generally there's a ton of application for AI in healthcare.
Yeah.
And like I, stay up at night trying to reimagine how you could, relieve the shortage we have of doctors if you actually did this right with testing centers and AI and sending you direct to the specialist you need versus everything have to go through a general practitioner. I'm not an expert in this at all, but there's actually so much I think that can be done.
Yeah.
We're focused in the mental health tech space, and like what's happening that's really interesting. And the US is already starting to deregulate. They just announced you don't need FDA approval anymore on a bunch of medical health technology and devices. And it'll be interesting to see if Canada follows suit. But I mean, you remove those regulatory requirements and a ton of innovation is going to happen there. So I think there's a lot to be done.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Mark, coming back to you, I'm curious your take on venture capital. You guys famously bootstrapped all the way to where you guys are now. Masters of your own domain. Do you think VC is dead? How is VC changing?
I don't think VC's dead. Definitely not. Like Graeme and team and everyone are fantastic. Yes. So I'd say a few things. One, I think constraint in many ways breeds a lot of innovation. A lot of the best innovation is bred from constraint. And you see that where a lot of businesses that got unlimited access to capital, they just became exceptionally sloppy with decision making. And that isn't good for anyone. And it's difficult to recover from, because not only is it difficult to recover from financially, but you have an entire team that hasn't honed their skills in terms of, okay, how do I use the resources available to me optimally? How do I make sure I shorten this? Because every day is dollars for any of these businesses. How do I make sure I shorten these decisions to as tight a mental cycle as possible? So I do think like the longer you can live within constraints as a business, you're going to add additional rigor to your decision making, and you are more likely to emerge as a winner for whatever that larger prize is within industry. I think the one thing, I think VC makes a ton of sense. I think it's fun to see like funding for hard asset businesses again. I think hard asset businesses are exceptionally undervalued, and they have been for a long time. People are starting to figure out that there are massive economics available there, and you don't have the tail risk that intangible businesses have now where, okay, is AI going to take that to zero? So I think it's fun to see funding there. The one thing I do think that has been pared back a bit, and this is partially on behalf of founders, that they're a little more conservative when it comes to raising, is I think some of them realize that VC math doesn't work for certain types of businesses. You're pretty much forced into kind of a winner-take-all market, and a lot of founders have gotten buried under a pref stack that doesn't make any sense for a very good business. They can run an exceptional business, but they can get buried under a pref stack that doesn't make sense for them or their employees. And I think that's something where a lot of founders have kind of realized that. And Calgary tech has always been good, where we're not as focused on kind of that next big raise headline. But you see people get stuck in that race in many other centers, and then they're surprised that the economics don't make sense and ultimately didn't incentivize them to build a successful business.
Yeah. Mark, you wrote an article in Forbes at the beginning of last year nearly. And I remember commenting on your post about it, something stupid. And the article was on the price of silver and why it's been growing so much, and why it will continue to grow. And I wrote a stupid comment and didn't buy silver. And in that time, it's like increased another maybe 40%, or you would know more. But I'm curious how you think countries and maybe companies are approaching tangible assets versus intangible in a day like in today's day.
Yeah, I think it's a great time for tangible assets, which is good for Calgary, good for Canada. I think it's kind of crazy that as a country, you can still trade fiat currency for hard assets globally, and everyone will say, yeah, I will give you my hard assets for your fiat currency that literally you get to print as much as you want. That's kind of insane. Like you think about some of these markets, like take rare earths or even take silver. You can corner these markets for hundreds of billions. You can just print it and buy it as a country. And then you have supply chain security forever for that specific market. And a couple countries have woken up to this over the past few decades. Japan has done this for a while with the central bank. US has woken up to this very recently, where they are happy to trade fiat for hard assets all over the globe. And they will do it for the next couple years, as long as everyone lets them. And you think about that, those countries are securing kind of the next century, where they say, yeah, there's a finite supply of this critical asset, and I'm happy to trade my money for that. And you think about that, the counter to that has always been, okay, well, that's going to devalue your currency. Sure, it does a bit. It actually makes it like easier to issue bonds when your currency gets devalued, so it's not that bad for the US. But ultimately, if you end up owning all those assets, is your currency going to be higher or lower? Probably higher versus the peers that didn't secure any of those. So you see China and other countries kind of waking up to that. And I think it's a real advantage for both VCs that are playing in those supply chains, because people want to fund them and they want to accelerate them, and like regions that have access to those. So huge opportunity for Calgary, where you've got energy and resources and companies to exploit them. Because those hard assets are going to be in demand for the foreseeable future, decades, likely centuries now, as people have realized, okay, that's a somewhat finite game I'm playing with a resource that I literally get to make up and exchange in the world. That's something that's very rare. Last time there was a rush for resources, let's say World War II, everyone was stuck with hard money currency, and they could not just pick and choose what they got to keep globally. Now everyone is still happy to trade for fiat currencies, which is very different.
Yeah. All right, Graeme, let's go to you. I think that's a great sort of drill down into Canadian tech. Graeme, coming out of 2026, what happens to the tech industry in Canada specifically? Are we leading in anything? What areas are we growing? Are we declining in anything?
So one of the things that you'll see in Canadian technology investing in general is there's like the policy strain of it, and then there's the underlying, unit economics strain of it. A big policy thing this year from a theme lens is going to be defense. There's going to be lots and lots of deals, headline deals as you're talking about, announcements of rounds, capital formation, productization, Lockheed buys something from a Canadian company. It'll focus on defense and like a sovereignty complex around how do we do stuff that we used to do that we don't do anymore. I think from the policy lens, that's going to be a big winner in 2026 in Canada. I think you're going to see a lot of people make moves there. And I think that the limiting factor is going to be market access for the product. So players who are able to get distribution into, European primes or players like that, or alternatively, even players like Dominion Dynamics here in town, or here in Canada, rather, they're trying to do the neo-prime thing.
And there's sorry to cut you off, but they just announced this week 25 million.
They
Series
did.
A.
They did.
Yeah.
You're correct. Absolutely.
25 million seed.
Yeah. There's also Vector Dynamics. Paul's running that company. They're focusing on this complex as well. So there's going to be capital there on the policy side. I think that on the unit economics side, one of the more interesting turns this year is going to be the integration of our resource disciplines here nationally and the basins that they accompany with this growing need for resources for artificial intelligence, both at like the knowledge work lens and then diffusion into robotics. So I think that we're really good. Mark, you said this earlier. We're good at energy here in Alberta. There's, oil and gas, there's power, there's renewables, there's all of these various different sources available. We've got a low population density. We've got lots of access to them. There's distribution and collection infrastructure. There's transmission infrastructure. There's refining infrastructure. You can do a bunch of stuff with it here. And so if there's a need for energy, you see that as like a natural thing we can leverage, accompanying the capital infrastructure in place, the workforce in place. Energy built Alberta in a lot of ways. And so from that lens, it's a natural continuation of the theme. Across the country, there's mining, hydroelectric infrastructure out east. There's something that we could really exploit as a country. But like the big themes from a unit economics lens, like pure market capital, are going to be focusing on what resources Canada can contribute uniquely to both its own and to the global effort to build out this next generation infrastructure, focusing on intelligence.
Yeah. Kelly, curious from your vantage point, Graeme mentioned the policy side of things. Are there other policy changes that you'd like to see come from Canada to help us build, or what do you think would create the biggest step change to enable us to build a really solid tech industry across Canada, but maybe Alberta more specifically as well?
Honestly, policy change is a bit above my pay grade. I don't know if I can if I can comment, but I think I'm primarily focused on the healthcare space, and I think whatever we can do from a regulation perspective to open that up for more innovation, I think we could have a real advantage there. But yeah, I haven't lived in the world of hard assets for about 20 years, so nothing to add on that.
Yeah. Well, what about to drill down into that space, in the healthcare space? What would make the biggest difference there if we could make a change from a regulatory perspective? As someone who knows absolutely nothing about the space.
Yeah, I mean, just right now, there's really no framework to follow or policy that exists to actually navigate the complexities of AI in at least the space that we're specifically operating in, right? So we're just flying blind and trying to figure it out. Yeah. But at some point, we need to start to put some guardrails there that actually allow companies to innovate within that. So I think right now it's just it's a gray area that we're all trying to figure out and hope that we get to the end of it, and that can lead to Health Canada approval or whatever that is. But there's no path on AI right now to get there.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Graeme, coming back to you, you wrote a post on LinkedIn. Alberta.
Was it annoying?
It was an annoying post. Alberta, what was it? It was something crazy, 90% of all Alberta's wealth is wrapped up in data center. It wasn't that, but it's wrapped up in data center projects that will fail. What was the headline?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So this is timely because yesterday more data came out. Actually, in today another study came out about this. Lots of people who are investors in North America, it turns out, not just Alberta, and are interested in this asset class of data centers, and they read about it a lot. And they, starting in early 2023, CNN was like, "Oh my God, did you know there's going to be data centers and they won't have enough energy?" Every rich guy in all of North America perked up, and they were like, "Not enough energy, you say?" What that led to was a vast program of site development, largely led by a grassroots effort here in Alberta. A ton of these groups, they're not institutionally sponsored. They're Buddy, who's like, "Well, I heard data centers are going to be big, so I'm going to put $100,000 into it. I'm going to put $200,000 into it. And the way I'm going to do it, because I know concentration is important if I'm doing a small investment, I'm going to pick a site and I'm going to fund the site development." What is site development? Site development is buying options. Anybody here trade options regularly? No degenerates? Okay, I am.
One guy in the back.
Yeah, exactly. One guy. Okay, perfect. You're cool. When you go out and buy options on a land and on turbines and on rights to use gas from gas pipelines, rights to attach to the power grid, all of these options cost a premium up front. You have to pay a payment just to have the privilege of getting the right to later convert the option and actually do the thing. And the option also has a term. And at the end of the term, the option expires worthless if you haven't converted it. So this process of site development is going out and gambling on whether a piece of land is good for a thing or not. Lots and lots of people did this all across North America, here in Alberta, in Texas, in every U.S. state, in BC and Saskatchewan, all over the place, people did this. We ended up hearing about it a lot. Starting even 2 years ago, we started getting a ton of people being like, "Hey, can you fund us?" And what we came to the conclusion of, if you do just your research on what the customers actually want and how the customers work versus kind of where the hype is, we didn't see a lot of sites that we thought were likely to convert. So last October, I wrote something saying, I think that 95% plus, I don't remember what the percentage was, but a high percentage of the sites that we've seen would fail. And people got, some people got worked up about it. There's a big campaign to attract this stuff to the province right now, and so it probably wasn't perceived as beneficial. People have vested interests, yada yada. In any event, flash forward to the present, data came out 2 days ago about the North American site development market for data centers, and the project failure rates over the last 6 weeks are up between 5 and 10x. And today another report came out saying that if you zone in just on the particular category of hyperscale data centers, they're up well over 4x just as a customer class alone. So, what you're seeing is that a lot of people rushed in with the idea of, "Oh man, I'm going to, make gold here." Like any gold rush, people forget to bring stuff with them. They don't bring groceries. They don't bring the necessities of life. They don't plan well for the future. You go up to the Klondike, you read stories about the Yukon gold rush. People, they wouldn't bring socks, right? They'd get there, but, "Oh, I forgot my socks." And what happens in that kind of environment is that a lot of things don't pan out for people. So what you're seeing now is the result of that at a low, really grassroots level, which is interesting because a lot of this stuff is usually AstroTurf. This isn't. A lot of people genuinely at a family office or even just high net worth level found a local person who they knew who was doing this and put money into it. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
Mark, how about you? I haven't really gotten your sense of what you think is going to be exciting other than AI this year in tech more broadly. But I'm curious if you zone in on Canada, what do you think are going to be some exciting technology things some exciting verticals that are going to be popping off this year?
Yeah, and the one thing I'd first add to Graeme's comments is, if you do have a bunch of data center equipment, we would sell it if the project we actually we actually help with a lot of those where the site didn't work out for whatever reason or got resized. We sell that equipment, turbines, etc. so that people can recoup that money. Transformers.
Yeah, for Valentine's Day as well, right?
Yeah.
We can buy that tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say in tech in general, the things I'm excited for is I am excited for like energy, power, hard assets, as I spoke about. I think the thing there that I'd want to expand on, though, is if you think about where you want to compete in an AI world, it always shocks me that people are like, okay, I am going to compete on the closest point possible to AI where all the other smartest people in the world are competing. So you see these people that say, okay, I'm going to join, these different machine learning companies, or I'm going to build an AI agent company, but I'm going to do it here in Calgary. In those realms, you've decided to compete with the smartest people globally, and you've picked an industry that's now no longer constrained by geographic barriers. So you're competing with everyone across the world, where before, historically, you may have been protected for a couple years by, okay, have they entered Canada yet? If you think about where I'd want to deploy AI if I was starting something today, is I'd pick the sleepiest industries, or I'd pick ones that had a hard asset moat that was very difficult to duplicate, and I'd decide, okay, that's what I'm going to optimize, because then you're given time, you're given scale. The analog I always like that I think is easy to forget is if you think about, okay, the early 2000s, just as Amazon was deploying effectively all their resources into optimizing retail shopping, the names that actually returned the exact same amount using the exact same tech were Costco and Walmart, because they had the footprint and they were able to use the same tech for optimizing their store shelves and reaching more customers. And that's something where, if you think about that, that's a much easier path than having to be the absolute number one in a brand new industry, everyone who decided to compete with Amazon. Or you say, hey, I'm a large incumbent, and we have so many of them in Calgary that are exceptionally well-run companies that have invested a lot in the existing infrastructure that provides a defensible moat. In many cases, it can't be duplicated from a regulatory perspective. That's actually a cool place to build AI, whether you're like servicing those companies or deploying it internally, because you're going to find optimization initiatives and you're going to be given more time than your competitors that say, oh, okay, I got to launch this new AI agent that's up to these capabilities, and I got to do it in the next 2 weeks before someone launches a competing one. That's a very difficult space to play in.
Yeah. Kelly, I want to end with you before we open it up to audience Q&A. You were living in Barcelona?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. And you were taking some time off, and you decided to come back to Calgary to join Headversity. And what was it that drew you back, and why did you want to come back to this cold city?
Well, feeling the weather today, I am wondering about that, questioning my decision. But no, I decided with my family I was going to take a year off to recover from what was a pretty wild 6-year ride at Benevity. And so I said to my husband, like, we got to go do something, because if like you leave me here in Calgary in the winter, I'll be back working like in a month. And so we hauled our family over to Spain for a little bit of a European adventure, which was awesome. But what I definitely learned about myself in that year was I need to be working and building something. And so it sort of became, Calgary's our home, so we're likely going to come back. And I started looking at, being a remote CEO of U.S. companies or global companies. And to be honest, like, it made more sense from a size and scale perspective with my background, and I couldn't get excited about it at all.
Yeah.
I joined the tech community in Calgary 18 years ago when there was not a lot happening.
Right.
People told me you're making a career limiting move actually doing that. And so just having been a part of it, and a part of 3 companies that really got to global scale and to be the global leaders in their space, and see how it's evolved to what it is today, I just ultimately decided, if I'm going to put this much energy into something, I want to scale another successful company here and do it with people that I like and I can see, and I can have fun doing it. And so that's really what got me here. And then what got me to Headversity specifically was I can't authentically sell something that I don't give a shit about. Mm-hmm. And mental health has been a passion of mine for a while, and I loved the impact element of Benevity, so I knew I wanted to do something again that was very purpose-driven, and this seemed like a great fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. My first job was as a super glue salesman, and could not get motivated. So I was a horrible super glue salesman. Give it up for these guys. Guys, I want to come around and take some questions from the audience. Anyone have any questions for these folks? Some people submitted questions. Where's Parker? Parker, you submitted a question around metrics that companies should have. I'm going to get you to just... And Parker from BLG, ladies and gentlemen. He made it. Give it up for Parker.
Admittedly, Phil's put me on the spot. I thought that was a prompt with an asterisk that I had to fill in, and I asked ChatGPT to do it. So, if I recall, do you have these written down?
I know what he asked. Yeah, I remember it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was to the tune of what's something that all tech CEOs that probably didn't have on their dashboard in 2025 as a metric should in 2026.
Yeah, that was the question. Yeah, that was great. Anything that we should be adding to our metrics dashboards that we didn't have before?
You should monitor, if you weren't last year yourself, you should monitor the direct number of tokens your organization's consuming producing software.
All right. That was a ChatGPT question? No wonder that was a bad question. I was just gonna, anyone else? I, again, remember more people who asked them, so I can just call them out in the crowd as well. But yeah, all right.
Hello. I think Kelly touched upon it. Is it the right distance? Okay, cool. Touched upon it earlier that as SDR can, an account exec, a GTM team can be handled by a senior person now with a bunch of different agents. So that can be applied to all different industries for engineering and sales. So how do you think the pipeline is going to be maintained moving forward, and what the company is doing when it comes to that? For example, Shopify would rather have a senior engineer, a super engineer dealing with agents, and how should people coming into the industry should work on the skills? Something which, who's done it? Jeff Bezos said it yesterday, that people early in their career should work in companies like McDonald's or Palantir to start with. And that people should start their career at McDonald's or Palantir. Yeah.
So what was the question?
No. The question was the pipeline.
How do, like the people skills pipeline?
The pipeline for the industry, like how you're working. Sorry.
You got it, Kelly?
I think sort of, yeah. I feel like I should put our Headversity's marketing managers here. I feel like I should put him on the spot to answer that question. But I think where you're going with that, I think what's starting to happen is versus coming at pipeline and demand gen with a more traditional marketing background, you're going to see a lot more technical people be working in spaces like that, because it's really like the engineering and the technical skills that can leverage AI agents and other things to just really maximize the efficiency of what you're doing. So I think you're going to see a shift in the type of background, perhaps, and tools that are used to generate that pipeline.
Yeah, we got a question.
Yeah, thank you, wonderful people, for sharing your knowledge. I'm interested in Barcelona topic. How was the tech space in Europe?
To be honest, I was trying to not work while I was there, so I didn't spend a ton of time on it. But Barcelona actually has quite a vibrant startup culture, and why we ended up picking there is actually the last two companies I worked for, our European headquarters was in Barcelona. So that was a place that, it's a good place to build in Europe, and you get a lot of really talented people that speak 4 or 5 languages. It's actually quite unbelievable. And so I kind of fell in love with the place, and that's how I ended up there. But I didn't spend a ton of time diving into the rest of the tech scene.
Hi. What industries in Canada are we quietly ignoring that are going to be the biggest winners in AI and tech?
That is a good question. Go first.
So one of a friend who's an investor, one of the rules of thumb he uses for this is you effectively pick the industries which have there are two metrics. One is, okay, what's the most people for a given amount of revenue? And then taking a look across those industries, what is the lowest effectively like revenue per person metric? And then they say, okay, there is a ton of value there where there's clearly a lot of like task related work. And then two, there are a lot of people just reporting because the organization has clearly become so large and so complex that there are a lot of people reporting to other people on what's happening and not adding value to that data or that decision, which I think is exciting for Canada because we have a lot of those industries like here. And I think a lot of people, when they think about that, they think about jobs getting displaced. One thing is there is so much opportunity with AI for you to add value that you definitely do not need to think like that. But if you think about finance, so tons of people at large banks, tons of people underwriting insurance, all these like jobs that require a lot of really smart individuals. There are ways to accelerate that, and smart companies are already running experiments on that. One of the things you'll see that's really interesting is if you look at, okay, and particularly the US banks, they're quite aggressive on this. If you look at what startups they've been funding recently, because they all have their own verticals, a lot of them are AI-based startups that they're clearly using in-house to automate and accelerate work. And I think healthcare is the other one that fits that bill, where you have a lot of people delivering outcomes and reporting on information between different verticals. AI is perfect for that data set that isn't repeatable, requires a ton of context. You can finally plug something in there to accelerate like better services, better results. So I think both those are two industries where Canada's done well globally in those industries, and we export like a lot of great products related to them. I think accelerating those is super exciting right now.
I've got a specific niche answer as well that I think is going to be a growth area for Canada that we're going to leverage. So the generic answer I'd give is like any kind of resource industry, mining, energy, power, renewable energy in particular. We've got a long heritage with. You could build cool AI stuff to make the power grid work better or make it, easier for people to get power or whatever. A specific niche area that Canada's got like a historical dominance in the Western Hemisphere is the nuclear fuel supply chain, which it sounds boring on its face, but, we're about to enter a nuclear renaissance. There's a loss of institutional knowledge that's happened via lack of investment and lack of continuation of past investment into that space, since the 1960s. Cameco, one of the biggest nuclear fuel producers in the world, is based out of fucking Saskatoon. There's a massive opportunity for Canada to revive that and to use artificial intelligence to supplant the loss of institutional knowledge that's accrued across the entire Western Hemisphere to become a leader there.
Cool. Let's go over here.
What would you say is the biggest risk facing Canadian tech in 2026?
I'll start. Oh, you start. Okay, I'll start.
I think one of the biggest things that Canada has not going for it right now is there's two ways to put this. So the easy way to put it is to say you don't want to have a focus on policy-led investment outcomes swamp, the underlying unit economic success we could otherwise see. So it's something that Canada's done time and time again in the past. Battery plants in Eastern Canada is the most recent example. There was like tens of billions of dollars of incentives plowed into getting the fucking Northvolt and Volkswagen, and now they're all shutting down and going bankrupt. That's not because batteries are bad or EVs are bad. It's because there is no natural reason to produce them there. And it was like a make work project, like building a dam or building a bridge to nowhere or building a railway to nowhere. You do it if you want to put people to work. It's not something that can sustain a nation. We shouldn't focus on that kind of stuff this year. Overly focusing on things that are like aspirational and not investing enough in things that we know we can win in is a big risk for capital formation and for startup formation this year, I would say.
I think for anyone in the room that works, in SaaS, and much of my career has been in enterprise SaaS, I think the SaaS business model is dead. And I remember being at a CEO event 2 summers ago with a bunch of the CEOs of Canada's largest companies, and then a more like startup sort of set of CEOs like myself. And, a PE guy was there, and he basically said at that time in 2023, like, SaaS is dead. And I'm CEO of a SaaS company. Like, what the fuck are you serious? Like, are you serious? And here we are. And I think what's going to happen there, it's not that every SaaS company is going to go away, but nobody wants per user per month license-based, seat-based pricing anymore. It's ridiculous. They want to pay for what they use and the value that they get. And so I think a pivot that has to happen is, like, the best companies that are going to win are going to be the ones that really can drive good business outcomes for their clients. And if you can measure that and really make a difference, you can price on that and you can win. But, like, aside from Salesforce, you can just extort Pepum for life and jack your price by 18% every year, and you'll just pay it because you can't live without. Like, I think that's not going to work for the majority of SaaS businesses anymore.
The one other kind of landmine that I think is always available to Canadian founders is there are just so many milestone-based grants in the ecosystem that I think it can, one, suck up a lot of your time, and then two, effectively stop you from iterating correctly. Anyone who's built anything knows that 90% of it is just, okay, what did the customer want? And then I'm going to rapidly iterate. And what did the customer want? I'm going to iterate again. And then that's how you become an industry leader. A lot of the Canadian granting processes are entirely milestone-based over multi-year timeframes, which is dangerous for founders because they will try to stick with them at the cost of a competitive global organization. And that's a real cost to, like, us as a tech community. And I'd say, like, credit to a lot of the orgs. They've done a good job changing this. It can still be changed more rapidly. But even Alberta Innovates has, like, done a really good job pushing flexibility on their grants, where a lot of other provincial granting organizations have not. And that's something where you see people caught up in the milestones because it does become effectively a real risk for the founder where they say, okay, if I change, then effectively I'm going to lose this funding, and then I've got to pull my timeline for my raise up 2 months, and it adds all this complexity to a business where all you really wanted to do was iterate on customer feedback, and now you're following effectively like a plan on a page that you put together for the government 5 years ago. That's dangerous, and you've seen some good businesses fail as a result of that.
Good take. I think we have time for one more. I do have, okay. Let's go to Dan.
Yeah. Well, now that this is the last question, this is going to seem like this was concocted by you and I, Philip. I just wanted to really thank, it's not every day you get to get such a stellar group of leaders in front of an audience. This is so awesome. Philip, thank you so much for putting this on. Calgary owes you a debt of gratitude and a big hug. So let's just thank him. Let's thank everybody from Tech Thursday and all the sponsors. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Graeme. I do have a question. Now, this might be a terrible question because you guys are all building companies from zero or somewhere to the trillions. But in this new world of AI agents and of rapid product and business development, what do you guys think is the opportunity specifically and unique to Canada and Calgary about building, like, not massive businesses, but micro-town businesses? So businesses where it's one person or two people that could be building, 100,000 in ARR, $1 million in ARR, scaling doing that, and then competitors come along and now they do another business. Like what's the opportunity for particularly young people and entrepreneurs to do so?
Dan, that's a fantastic question, and thanks for setting us up so nicely. And I agree. Thank you to Phil for putting this on. It's wonderful. There's never been such a good time to start a company because of this phenomenon Dan's mentioning. It used to be that to convince venture capital to invest in you, you had to be like, I'm going to build $1 trillion company and it's going to be, 10 billion a year of revs. And like, here's how I get there. All you have to do is dump money on it. And that limited the kinds of businesses that could ever get started. Because if it wasn't a big business, what the fuck, I'm not going to invest in it. And that's not because it's not good. It's just because of the math of venture capital. The best thing about being a young person today, being an old person today, being anybody who wants to be entrepreneurial, it doesn't matter what your background is. Anybody can do this. The best thing in the world about being an entrepreneur today is that you're able to target these markets that yesterday weren't economical because you couldn't pay $5 million worth of software capex to build a product. Today, one person can do it in like a weekend. And so you can start a company that's not designed to take over the world. You can start a company that's designed to be a better alternative than working for some loser. And that's the best thing about AI. So everybody here,
I think, yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, Kelly. I don't know what you're talking about. So that's my answer. I think, there's never been a better time to do this because it gives you absolute control of your own destiny. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, instead of that barrier to entry of like, you got to convince somebody. Like my first company failed because I couldn't convince somebody to give me money to hire people to build the next thing. And like, you get demoralized eventually. You talk to 1,000 people, you talk to 2,000 people, give me money. No, I can't do it without money. It doesn't matter. Today, there's no gatekeeping. Like, you talked earlier about how VC is dying. VC is dying. It's dying at an accelerating rate. Funds are not forming anymore. The reason for that is that you don't need gatekeepers anymore. People can just do what they want. And honestly, it's better. It's better.
Yeah. I think that was a great answer. Guys, maybe one more time, huge thank you to these folks. Cool. Our panel next week is back here, and I think, to be honest, some of the like funnest, really early stage companies here in Calgary. So Need, Cashew, and Monarch. So come on back, and now feel free to stick around, ask some folks, meet some of these incredible folks in the room, and listen to DJ Tech Thursday. Shahariar in the back. Let's rip it up, my man. Come on now.